I thought it was the greatest example of control. You know, Max knowing his rule book inside out better than anyone else in the paddock. And he knew not to jump those lights, and he was under no issue. I mean, honestly, those guys could have got a 10-second penalty and he could have won by 30 seconds. But it didn't matter. I mean, he was so calm about it. He was calculating. I mean, he was exemplary. For me, this was a masterclass of how a racing driver reaches the pinnacle of his career and becomes a fourth-time world champion.
Hello and welcome to Formula for Success. I'm David Coulthart, and with me today is the man who's been eagerly waiting to break down all the action and drama from Brazil. It's Eddy Jordan.
Yes, it was me. I mean, David, I'm lost for words. I'm really lost for words because that, for me, you know, we've had some titanic races this year, and you've went on to explore the greatness of what those races were. But, I mean, they pale into insignificance as to what this race was. It was possibly the greatest race I've ever seen. I thought it was the greatest example of control. You know, Max knowing his rule book inside out better than anyone else in the paddock. And he knew not to jump those lights, and he was under no issue. I mean, honestly, those guys could have got a 10-second penalty and he could have won by 30 seconds. But it didn't matter. I mean, he was so calm about it. He was calculating. I mean, he was exemplary. For me, this was a masterclass of how a racing driver reaches the pinnacle of his career and becomes a fourth-time world champion.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, I was just excited for a moment when you said you're lost for words. I was just about to tell you, hold that thought. And then you found your words and went off on a monologue.
DC, I lie a lot, don't you worry.
It was a remarkable race. Another one which I enjoyed from the comfort of my sofa. But I'll be back on track for the final three races of the year. And it's really the sort of ebb and flow, the momentum looked like it was with McLaren, looked like it was with Lando. And all of a sudden, we get that roller coaster of emotion. You had Max angry and frustrated on Sunday morning after what he felt was a bit of an injustice in qualifying. It is what it is. You know, these things are beyond your control. And then if we look at the previous 1,121 World Championship races, only 5 have ever been won from 17th or lower, making this achievement even more remarkable. And you know who was a driver out of those 5 who features in that list twice, who won you know who it is?
Oh, he's such an old dickhead, old Watty. I absolutely adore him. Watty, we love you. You've got an adoring fans here. Can you get your ass down here and come on a programme with DC and me? You have a whole big story to tell. You've done this twice. To come from 17th, and I remember those tyres, when you had the Michelin tyres, in Detroit in particular, God, John, you were just an unbelievable legend in those races. And if only for those races, we'd love you to come on and tell us, you know, what was going through your mind, because it was dry in those conditions. You were just an example. Everyone got their mouth open. They couldn't believe how quick you were. So please, John, this is a message to John Watson out there, anchors. Can you please write into us and please request the appearance of John Watson on our programme. We love you, John, and I want you here.
Yeah, well, I saw John at the BRDC annual general meeting at Silverstone a couple of weeks ago, and he was looking in fine form. So yeah, we'd love to have him on, and he can tell us as a man who went from 22nd on the grid at the US Grand Prix, and also from 17th. Also in the American Grand Prix in Detroit. So, yeah, he's got experience of that. But let's just break down.
Oh, sorry, DC, don't move on, please. Don't move on. I'm sorry to cut you short. He also has a third notable incident what happened to him, and which shouldn't go unnoticed, because I think it's probably the biggest thing he's ever done.
Does it involve Jordan Grand Prix?
He drove the first ever car that we built. We asked him to drive the car at Silverstone, and he got out of the car and he said, I can't tell you a lie, but this has a real balance to it. So God bless you, John. You gave us that first inspiration alongside some great stories that you can tell us. Come on our show, please. Move on. Sorry to cut you down, David.
Max, he said, what a rollercoaster emotion, frustrated and angry in the morning, and then just mighty in the afternoon. I think he had like 17 or 18 consecutive fastest laps. And it's the sort of stuff that when I was reflecting on it, it's the reason why I think I fell in love with the sport. It was about wanting to see excellence, seeing people doing things that is, you go, that's unbelievable, but it is fact. And I think that it probably calmed a lot of the sort of growing sort of finger pointing and frustration or anger, or whatever terminology you want to use, that was building towards Max, because he's his own man. He speaks his mind. He's not going to dance to anyone's tune, and that is divisive. But irrespective of who you support, even a Lewis would have to look at that and go, that's the sort of thing that at the top of my game I was able to do. And I'm not saying that Lewis won't do it again, but Max was just head and shoulders above the rest. And that was a world champion's drive, no doubt. In the land of one of the other inspirational wet drivers, Ayrton Senna. And at the end of it, I guess somewhat frustrated, when Lando Norris said, well, that's luck for them, nothing more. They got lucky, which I'm not going to sort of rub that in Lando's face, because I don't think...
That's not clever.
Yeah, it was an interview he did. Yeah, well, look,
what did he say?
Frustration, isn't it? He was quoted on Sky as saying they were lucky. They got lucky with, just when they didn't make the tyre stop, then there was a red flag, then they could take a free tyre stop. Yes, there was an element of luck.
He won by 20-odd seconds, David.
Yeah, but the pit stop. He got the pit stop. Listen, I'll tell you who was bloody lucky, was Jordan Grand Prix, when I led the majority of the race
Start the musical story.
Until just before the virtual safety car, not virtual safety car, sorry, they stopped the race because Fernando crashed, and I think Mark Webber crashed into him, or vice versa. And I did the lion's share of leading, and then I ended up finishing fifth because they never restarted the race. You were lucky.
Great story my mother always told me. Son, remember this. Always better to be born lucky than rich. And I was born very lucky.
And then you ended up rich.
I tried to become rich, and I'm still working on it.
Yeah. Well, you've achieved that, that's for sure. So look, I say I'm not beating up on Lando at all on that. I think that that day in history was about Max being at his brilliant best. He's shown it before in the wet. As we've said on this podcast before, Lando is the real deal. He will have his moment. He will challenge for the world title, whether it is in the remaining races of this year or whether it's next year, where there's an element of stability, and McLaren are certainly going into it arguably best placed for that. So, his time will come.
David, I'm sorry. I have to call you to some form of order there. Lando hasn't quite got there yet. He hasn't got there on the start. He hasn't got there on the pole position run to the corner. He has the speed, beyond any doubt he's got the speed. But there's nothing in me that tells me that I've seen in Lando something that I saw what Max could do on Sunday. Nothing. I'm sorry, it's just not there. So Lando has to look at himself long and hard this winter into the mirror and say to himself, if I'm going to be a great world champion, I have a lot to learn here. And I need to start replaying those videos about what it really is like to be hard, tough, and victorious. And I'm sorry, at this moment in time, he hasn't got it.
My God, Eddie, you are a hard man.
It's a fact.
Well, look, the facts are...
He hasn't translated those into race wins. He's dicked around on the podium. He's dicked around on the start line. Honestly, how many races should he have won this year? Tell me, David.
Well, a few more probably than he has.
And why did he not get them?
Yeah, because he hasn't converted the starts, and he wasn't maestro in the rain in Brazil. So I think, for me, Lando has it. I think Lando will deliver it.
When?
Well, in the future.
What's the future mean? Will you or I be alive to see it? My woman.
I hope so. I hope we'll be alive to see it.
Jesus,
Anyway,
so do I. Not sure, mind you. But anyway.
Yeah, I believe so. I think that what we're witnessing, and Lando has said it himself in a previous interview that Max is the benchmark in Formula One right now, and Max schooled them all on Sunday. But it was 10 races since Max had won a Grand Prix, his longest since an 11 race streak in 2020. So, it was a bit of a barren era or period there for Max, but what a way to come back and say to everybody, I'm not giving up this World Championship without that kind of fight.
Somebody rang me and sent me a text and they said, my God, Norris is on pole. Have you seen what's gone on with the qualifying Sunday morning? Max is in 17th place. And I'm saying to myself, Jesus, my great client, obviously Adrian Newey, and because, there's points or money or whatever it is for winning a world championship, needless to say. I said, well, Jesus, that's going to make it very tough because, there's a good possibility 25 or 26 points. And, if Max is able to haul himself up into the top 10 like he did the previous week, that's going to be a bit of a struggle, but there's going to be a big gap between the points. So 5 hours later, what happens? It's a roller coaster. It's turned on its head. One gets 26 points and the other one gets 6. And then you tot it up and it works out like it's 60-something points. And you might as well say, look, it's a slam dunk now because, 3 races to go. How is Lando going to turn that one around? It's a tough ask to think that Lando... Let me ask you this. Does Lando in his head think the championship is gone now?
I think a racing driver takes each lights out as an opportunity. I think outside of the car, he probably realizes that it's going to take an element of the racing gods intervening. So a reliability issue, a crash, a non-finish or something for Max. But basically, Max can wrap it up in Vegas. I think we'd all love to see it go down to the final in Abu Dhabi because, that just it's terrible for them, but it's great for us. Yeah, and you're coming as well. So we look forward to being in the same room. But right now, he's probably... Max as well, they're both very sort of gentle, normal people out of the race car. Where they become a bit sort of, their own racing personalities, of course, is in the car. And Max is, gets his elbows out probably a bit more than Lando does. But this is all part of growing into your what is Lando, 26, 27 years old? They're still boys in many ways. I felt it was about 30 where I kind of figured out what life was about, and that coincided with my best performance. What
puberty, David, or something like that. You needed to find.
yeah, probably, yeah. So I still
in your case, it arrived very late.
It did indeed. Yeah, I'm going to mature next year, but I think that Max arrived the finished article just with a few rough edges already when he came to Formula One, where for others, I think it's taken a bit longer. I think Charles as well. He's still like a puppy, occasionally peeing on the carpet. But once they iron out all those little mistakes, I think we're going into a golden era of Formula One. Now, let's move it along in August, you had your buddy, our buddy, Flavio Briatore, come on the show, and he predicted that Alpine would secure podium finishes by the end of the 2026 season. Well, that has sort of been accelerated.
Circumvented now, hasn't it?
Both their drivers who drove brilliantly, unquestionably in really tricky conditions. And that's the first time that the Enstone team has had 2 drivers on the podium since Korea in 2013. And that's back in the day when they were known as Lotus, when Kimi Räikkönen and Romain Grosjean finished second and third. We have to go way back to 97 when you had 2 French drivers on the podium, and that was in Spain. It was Oliver Panis in P2 and Jean Alesi in P3. So what an amazing comeback. And I was really happy for the team. They've gone through a lot of pain, but it does feel that with Flavio in place as an advisor, with Ollie Oakes there leading the team now, had done a fantastic job, former karting world champion, done a fantastic job with his own race team, High Tech, in the lower formulas. It feels that they're kind of steadying the ship. And of course, circumstances played to their their favour, but you've got to be in it to win it, and they made great decisions on strategy.
When I spoke to Flavio, he was doolally about Hollyoaks. He couldn't get his breath about how good this lad was. Now, I've known since 1990, I've known Flavio. We've had lots of tussles, we've had lots of battles, but I can promise you, when it comes to party time, we've had some hell of a parties. When Naomi was around and Heidi Klum was, oh my God, you cannot imagine what was going on. But Flavio and I, we had to muscle our way through the programme and make up stories and do various things. But for as much as some people dislike maybe the attitude, because he had no DNA coming in here, he made the point that Luciano Benetton gave him. He said, look, go sort this out. This is a total mess. I need you to sort out this team. And what happened within a very short period of time? He had Fernando Alonso in there winning World Championship. Flavio has that little... He has a Midas touch that is in a position that he's able to think about something and it'll come true. And when you've got that belief, when you've got that understanding, when it happened in 1990, and remember the championships that he won, he was a rock star. And I mean a real rock star, because he was the light and soul of the party. So if I was with him and he'd give me a lift, and sometime I'd go in his plane, sometime he'd come in mine, and we'd always have a fight to get back to see who could get back to Kidlington quickest. Because there would be Arrows, Walkinshaw, and there would be all sorts of Frank Williams and everyone all driving their nuts off to try and get to back to Kidlington. We were like children. It was just ridiculous what was going on. And when we got back to Kidlington, we'd absolutely got nothing to do. So I don't know what we used to do, but anyway, that was the way it was. Back to the Alpine. When he came back to Alpine, that was a surprise for me, because I'm thinking to myself, hang on, he's got Tweegan, he's got this, he's moving to Dubai, he has businesses there. He can't stop making money. The guy's a genius, and I think he should write a book as soon as possible, because it will be one of the greatest books for anyone who's learning or wants to learn about how to run a business and how to get on with life and have fun. When did you last see him with a snarl on his face? He's always smiling and laughing. I have no idea what he's thinking about, but obviously it's usually different to what I'm thinking about. I love
EJ,
the guy.
what you think about? Yeah, absolutely, we can hear that. What you think about is a constant sort of source of amazement to me, because we were talking about Alpine. We're talking about the drivers being second or third, and then you go off on a monologue on Flavio. Yeah. So, other notable things that happened. Great day for Alpine, and I'm sure not lost on you the fact that is worth tens of millions to them, getting up into sixth in the Constructors' Championship. And when it comes to packaging that team for future sale, which it looks like Renault would like to do, then all of that adds to the bottom line. So an absolute masterstroke, and great to see. Now, what was also, I think, good to see, and bear with me on this, is when you've got damp conditions and you've got a tricky little track like Brazil, then that leads to incidents and accidents. So in qualifying, we had Sainz crash, we had Albon crash, we had Alonso crash, we had Stroll crash, and Colapinto. And then, of course, in the Grand Prix, we had a number of incidents as well. Colapinto, I'm not trying to be clever,
Stroll.
But you could almost predict, Stroll in the first lap. That was a very bizarre one. I've not actually read the press release to know what particular thing happened there, but it looked like someone pulled the handbrake on. And then, of course, Colapinto, he crashed exactly where that incident I talked about with Fernando and Mark Webber. On a drying track, on worn inters, that was just a bit of unfortunate inexperience on his part. But you need to go through those growing pains as a young driver to kind of find out what, the races to the checkered flag. It's not about one individual lap time.
I still thought Colapinto, there was a couple of outstanding moves. I thought Colapinto, he's probably not going to get a drive, and we're going to miss him, because I think his face, the fans in Argentina, I think we had 300,000 people in Brazil without a Brazilian driver. I mean, that's a remarkable number of people to turn up at Brazil in a very, very hostile weather. So well done to Brazil for that. Well done for Carlo Pinto, because I'd say 30, 40, 50,000 people were added to the actual bottom line there. So there's thing. But the person who stood out for me, and I have to be honest again, which comes back to the same situation that I've been banging on about for some time. And that is that, in my opinion, Lawson is the real deal here. He drove with a lot of pressure, a lot of people hanging out of the back of him, and he knows how to handle himself. He has not got the car that Lewis had. He has not got the car that other people had. But he displayed a level of competence that I was super impressed with. And that can only grow, it can only get better. And with the right person looking after him, whether Christian Horner, whoever it may be in that team in Red Bull, that's where he should be now. Not next year, now, because he'd be picking up the pieces, he'd be learning with that team, so he's ready to fly in 2025, because they must win the Constructors' Championship, in my opinion, in 25, and they're never going to do that with Perez. Perez, he's now had, how many chances has he had? Do you think he'll have a drive next year? David, not a chance. Not a chance. Lovely guy, but we know lovely guys don't win you Grand Prix. And whereas Lawson is the deal. He's part of the family there, part of the makeup, and he is the person that should be in that car.
Okay. Well, look, I'm not going to disagree with the fact Checo, lovely guy. He has been a Grand Prix winner. He has been a loyal servant, as the team have been to him. But unless something happens in the next 3 races that gives you a whole lot of confidence that it's just an ism with this car, then the writing is very, very boldly on the wall. It's a little bit like, not putting them as the same quality of driver, but it's a little bit like Lewis Hamilton with Mercedes. He just hasn't found harmony with that car. George, I guess, younger, less sensitive, possibly, just is getting on with it and has earned the right to lead that team into next year. So I'm sure we'll have more to talk about with those guys in the final 3 races. But just while I mentioned Lewis there was a special moment where he got to drive Ayrton Senna's iconic 1990 World Championship winning McLaren. And it was great to see. It was wet and it would have been easy for them to go, let's not take a risk. But he looked the business in that car. And it's interesting. I've always sort of picked up on Lewis's connection to Ayrton. But the lesser spotted Sebastian Vettel was in Brazil, again, getting involved in promoting whatever Save the Planet thing he's working on right now, and also connecting into the Senna legacy once again. I hadn't really ever picked up on the fact that Seb was such a Senna fan through his racing career. It's only been of late, so maybe he's a bit of late to the party in that. I always thought he was sort of, Michael Schumacher was his hero. I
wasn't aware of that too. That's news to me, and I'm glad to hear it. Because at the end of the day, he was a 4 times world champion. I mean, he has his own legacy there. There's no doubt about that.
Indeed. Okay, well, look, EJ, conscious that we've covered all the main topics there, unless there's anything else that came out of Brazil for you that you would like to discuss?
The race that you talked about, that where you led for most of the race, if I remember rightly, the race got stopped after 75% distance.
Correct.
And I was really scared. I was scared that they were going to have to do the same. I'm very glad they didn't. It was brilliant.
Yeah, indeed. Well, that will be one of those races that people remember where they were when they watched it. It was unbelievable. It was fantastic. And well done, Formula One, and to all the drivers for delivering it for us.
Sure.
Remember, you can get in touch with us on social media at F1 for Success and send your questions in to ffs@whisper.tv. That's all from me. EJ, that's all from you.